what does it say? This hangout on there is live. I'm live. All right. All right. So I decided to make a transition from going from F sharp, which I started, I think, a little over a year and a half ago, to transitioning what I've learned about functional programming to basically hit it hard within the web development side. So people that do know me, they know that I hate the web development stack with a passion. I hate the web development stack with a passion. I am a native app supremacist. I hate the web. I hate the way it looks. I hate the development experience. It's clunky. It's just, I don't like it, and I'm sure that maybe half of it is me not really having the skill set that's required to really enjoy it. But I'm willing to bet that there's a good portion of it that's just clunky and very primitive, very Stone Age. I don't think it's cool to have 100 moving parts to build a basic satisfactory user experience for a CRUD app. I just don't. Why am I saying this? Why am I saying this? All right, well, so I try to plan things out. All right, back in like 2009, I made the strategic step to say, I'm done with C++, I'm done with Microsoft Foundation classes. Yeah, I'm going to go full throttle in the native .NET space, and I'm going to start building Silverlight and WPF applications. And when I made that declaration, when I started studying for my certification, it felt good. It was a huge learning curve, but I was soaking it in, and I really felt like I was engineering. To this day, I have this I'm in love. I have this unhealthy infatuation with XAML, right? I enjoy it. When I'm in the shop and you're paying me to build some native app that's WPF, I mean, I am in the zone, right? Xamarin Forms, a little bit, it's kind of clunky, but straight like WPF, I'm all over it. So why am I saying WPF, right? Okay, well, I'm saying it because even though I haven't really stepped into immersed myself within the code of building out some Elm, I think I see an opportunity where I can really dive in and perhaps exploit an opportunity to finally enjoy engineering a user experience like I've been doing in WPF, like I've done in Silverlight, and like I've done in Xamarin Forms. All right, I think Elm, which I'm trying to understand it, right? But my current knowledge or ignorance of Elm is that they want to basically abstract away JavaScript as the core building block that a developer must use. My understanding is that you use this functional programming language called Elm, and it compiles or distills down into JavaScript, but it abstracts that stuff away. But not only does it distill down into JavaScript, but my understanding is it's all Elm, and it's going to handle the presentation and the styling and the integration logic, translated the HTML5, the JavaScript, and the CSS. It's going to spit out all that. That's my understanding. All right, I haven't really examined to verify that, but that's over probably half a dozen YouTube videos that I've listened to. That's what I captured. Okay, don't quote me on it. So With that said, I'm very niche right now with my skill set, right? I've focused on native application development for both desktop and mobile. And it's been really, really niche, really, really clutch. The jobs out there for me in Miami, they're not really abundant. And I'm really tired of traveling to get my money. It's not cool. Maybe if I was going to Toronto or New York City, or if I were to go back overseas to like Manila, I would love to work in like Hong Kong, then that would be cool, right? But to make a long story short, why am I talking about traveling? Well, because it seems like the web is more ubiquitous, if I'm using that term correctly, and that there should be hella more jobs doing web development than there are doing native desktop or mobile. All right. So my strategy is I, Scott Nimrod, am entering the web development space. And I plan on coming in it full throttle with a passion. And I'm going to go full throttle in Elm. I'm going to take what I've learned from F sharp. And just like I migrated my skill set from Silverlight WPF to Xamarin Forms, I'm migrating my skill set, my knowledge from F sharp to Elm. And I'm gonna try to go beast, right? I'm going to make up a third of the questions posted on Stack Overflow because I'm that type of dude. Anything I don't know, then I'm just going to be a fool and I'm going to ask and I'm going to spam Stack Overflow until I can feel like I'm dead serious. So I can feel like maybe 2 years from now I could be an expert at this. If this really does solve the problems that prevented me from entering the web space previously. So that's the declaration of my journey. I'm entering the web space. I'm going to build up on my functional fundamentals or lack of, and I'm going from this F sharp to Elm, and I think it's going to make me a better developer. And I'm excited. I think I know it's going to be painful, right? Yesterday, I almost had a meltdown because I could not figure out just the simple things of just getting started, just bootstrapping just a normal app. So, for example, I struggle to figure out. One is I'm a Visual Studio guru, right? Like Visual Studio and shortcut keys, that's me. That's what I do. Like I'm comfortable. That's my house. All right. Visual Studio is my house and I do whatever I want in it. And I'm really good. All right. But this Elm, to the best of my knowledge, it's not in Visual Studio. So I spent like half a day trying to pull down relevant IDEs, specifically two of them. This IDE called Atom, and then the other one, Visual Studio Code. And I spent so much time trying to just figure out how to move around within this integrated development environment. And I know for a fact that Visual Studio is really complicated and it's more complicated than the Atom or Visual Studio Code. But the thing is I know it. That's my domain. And so when I went to these other IDEs, I'm like, well, how do I use the REPL? Where is the REPL at? How do I discover the REPL? I spent forever trying to figure out how to discover the REPL. Read, what is it? What does REPL stand for? Read, evaluate, print loop. And so also spent forever trying to figure out how to compile my code. Like I purposely put in like syntax errors, and yet my code was compiling without any errors, right? And so Death by 1,000 paper cuts is what I I am going through as of yesterday, and I'm sure I'm probably going to be going through it for the next probably 6 weeks. And so, hence, I'm going to be spamming Stack Overflow, tag Elm, tag Visual Studio Code, and this is what it's going to take for me to be successful within the web space. Let's talk about money, because why am I doing this if I'm not doing it for free unless it's something that's worthy of contributing towards. If it's something that I think is solving a really healthy problem, then yeah, I'll give my time for free. But really, it's taking advantage of new technology where very few really dominate within that space. And I want to be one of the few people that dominate in that space so that I can be rewarded financially for my investments. And so I don't know what top-notch web developers get paid using, I don't know, Ruby on Rails. Is that still being used? Using, I've heard of frameworks called React, Angular 2.0. Again, I don't know anything about that stuff, right? But I'm curious how much the top-notch developers are getting paid within that space. And if they're making 150,000 or 200,000, then I want to be making 200,000 as an Elm developer within the first 36 months. So that might sound like crazy talk, but I'm dead serious. Now I understand that I might have to serve as an apprentice. I might have to serve as a junior developer doing Elm, and honestly, I'm okay with that for the first 6 months because I'm focused on dominating the space. I'm interested in joining a cartel of Elm developers and dominate the space that way as well, whatever goes. So that's it. Let me check my YouTube comments or questions. I'm really interested in what the whopping 2 people that are viewing this right now feel about my latest decision. And let me launch this YouTube thingy and see if anybody left anything before I check out. Gabriel, I haven't talked to you in a while. You said, yo, you should show us around your house Visual Studio with a tutorial. Gabriel, I've done that already. I'll shoot you a link. It's on my bismonger.wordpress.com. You can also go there by going to bismonger.net and then click on the blog link. And I created a specific video for some productivity techniques within Visual Studio for you to be on your way. I could try to quickly search for that. Hold up. Hopefully I could just go to my blog and then type in maybe productivity. Let me try that. Productivity. I can't spell. Come here, come here, come here. No. Productivity tools in Visual Studios. Visual Studio. Yeah, I think this is the link right here. I'm about to reply to your comment. I think this is it. You can check that out. And I'm not sure if that's from the perspective of C sharp, which has way more tools, or way more tooling than F sharp. I don't know, but you can check that out. I think that's the link that I just provided in the live chat. I guess I could, well, whatever. Check out my blog if you still don't see it there. And is there anything else you want to say? How do I get back to my Google Hangout? All right, so I'm gonna wait like probably 60 more seconds, and if I don't see any more comments or questions, I'm gonna sign off. But I feel good. I feel like I'm kind of excited. Um, I'm ready to go full throttle. This whole web space. Now there's some things that I'm unsure about. like the thing that I like most is the idea that this whole JavaScript is abstracted away. But within the actual wild, when it comes to solving real world problems, am I really going to have to interact with or perform interops with actual JavaScript code, JavaScript libraries, etc.? That part, I don't know. So that's the part that I'm kind of insecure about, because I've avoided JavaScript like it's the plague, like it's leprosy. And so that's something that I guess I'll find out when I progress enough. What else did you say? Also, I don't see Elm in the future of web development. Primarily, Angular and React are dominating the job market. In Miami, it's Ruby on Rails, but don't learn that. Okay. Well, you know more about web than I do, and I'm dead serious. Like, when I say I'm a native supremacist, I am. I hate web with a passion, like with just pure discrimination. However, you say you don't see Elm in the future of web development, and then you kind of back that up by saying primarily Angular and React are dominating the job market. Well, yeah, they're dominating the job market today. Yeah, I don't really. I've done a couple of exercises in Angular 1.0. I never messed around with React, but you know what? I'm glad that you mentioned that, right? So let me dig deeper into what you just said, and then your last statement as of now, in which you say why Elm. Okay, so this is how I'm going to respond to it. If you haven't immersed yourself in functional programming, then I can understand why you would ask why Elm. And I'm not being disrespectful. I'm saying that I can understand why you would say why Elm. So I'm going to tell you why Elm, okay? Based on my current understanding, all right? Elm appears to be, based on my limited understanding or ignorance, you pick whatever one you want. Elm appears to be the pure functional approach, aka solution, for building and maintaining, with emphasis on maintenance, maintaining, I would say, enterprise web applications. All right, that's my current understanding. That's what it's designed for. So something that you missed in your comment that you probably also meant to add when you said Angular and React is you probably wanted to add TypeScript as well, right? Because TypeScript, the selling point of that, my understanding, is to also build enterprise grade web applications. And when I say enterprise grade, I could say industrial grade, right? When you have tens of thousands or 100,000 or approaching 1 million lines of JavaScript code, is it really possible? And I'm sure your Googles have done it, and maybe your Yahoos have done it, right? But without really relying on the compiler to identify a lot of stupid errors, without having a type system that the compiler can just really take advantage of, I think it is really challenging to build industrial grade software. So with that said, one interesting thing that I've heard, and again, I haven't really verified it for myself because I'm not an Elm programmer, is they said that there's both. Let me be careful how I say this, but I was listening to Jessica Kerr, aka Jessitron. You can check her out on Twitter. You can also look for her on YouTube. And I've also heard other speakers on YouTube, right? Because this is what I do. I listen to YouTube conference talks or conference speakers. And so something that was really interesting, what they said about Elm, is that it's kind of weird because I don't want to believe it. They said there's no such thing as runtime exceptions when you're building a web application with Elm, or with a web application that has been built with Elm. You don't experience runtime exceptions. Think about if that's true, and I hear it coming out the mouths of multiple people that are respected. If that's true, think about how much of a game changer that is. Think about that's one less major collection of incidents within production that your customers will never ever complain about. They'll complain about, you know, their expectations of business logic that has gone wrong, you know, based on whether we recorded the requirements that the customer wanted, or we just implemented it wrong, right? That still exists, but there's no like runtime exceptions with web applications that are built on top of Elm or with Elm. There's no such thing as a null reference exception. Again, I don't use JavaScript at all, but you don't run into at runtime you finally find out that you misspelled a variable or whatever. Like none of that exists. You're forced to handle everything, and the compiler, my understanding, it does a pretty good job of identifying exactly what the error is and what you need to do about it. To me, that's taking advantage of engineering. This isn't hacking, right? I think web development today is taking 100 different technologies. I know that's probably extreme. 10 different technologies and trying to glue them together so that they work, right? I'm biased, I am. That might be dramatic, but I don't think it is. And I think it's really hacking. I don't think it's engineering. And well, I love to engineer. I love to build. And I like to step back and say, yo, this is somewhat as simple as I can make it. And I'm proud of what I built. So that's why I think Elm is a potential game changer. The other part is I don't want to be an expert at CSS. I don't want to be an expert at, I might still have to be an expert at JavaScript if I really want to understand the internals of the Elm programming language. But as of right now, I want to embrace abstracting away JavaScript. The other part is, let's talk about engineering again, is what does testing look like when you're building a web application? Because I don't know, because I don't build web applications. But I mean, since mainstream is still gung-ho about object-oriented programming and how I'm being a jerk right now. Like, I know I am, but mainstream still believes in modeling the real world, you know, through object orientation, which they're not doing well at all. How do I say this? How do they test that? When you have a programming language that does not constrain you to write testable code, and you're supposed to exercise diligence, when the code within your method can reach out to any code outside of it, when your application is primarily based on side effects occurring everywhere, mutations occurring everywhere, again, how are we doing with writing testable code? How many of us are actually How many of us actually know how to test our code? Again, that's based on being able to write testable code. We have people that call themselves senior developers and they don't know how to write a test, a basic unit test, right? Yeah, I know this for a fact because I've worked with most of them. But anyway, when you say why Elm, well, it constrains you to write testable code. A pure function is inherently testable. Again, this contributes to, or I don't know how to say this, but this is another selling point of getting back to engineering software versus making software work, which I think web development is all about. I don't think it's about engineering. I think it's about getting things to work, getting things to play nice together. And I'm not with that at all. I understand that there's a lot of money for people to hack things. I just don't want to be one of those people. Let me see if there's anything else. You have any other questions? I'm not sure who else is viewing this. I have an idea who's viewing it, but if there's nothing else, I'm going to sign off in about another 60 seconds. Oh yeah, also Elm supports property-based testing. So this is basically within the same class of quick check with Haskell, FS check for F#. I'm sure Scala probably has Scala check, if we're following the naming conventions. And so this means that within Elm, I think it's called Elm Check. Don't quote me on it, but within Elm, you can go ahead and use this library. Maybe it's library. Yeah, you can use this library to basically generate the edge cases for you. So what does that mean? We have example-based testing, right? And what's example-based testing? Well, that's what we call unit tests, right? Our unit tests is we're expressing specific inputs. Based on these inputs, when we run it through this operation, aka method, it's going to give us this specific output, right? And so hence now we have happy path, right? And we have sad path, right? In which we have to specifically identify these are the inputs that we're using. These specific inputs for the happy path gives us this specific output for the happy path. These specific inputs for the sad path gives us this specific output for the sad path, right? And then you have to brainstorm all the edge cases of what if scenarios that shouldn't really happen, aren't likely to happen, but it's possible it can happen. And so in object-oriented programming, because they're not constrained to be testable, to be without side effects, we have to brainstorm as human beings, what are all the different scenarios that could be passed into our methods? We have to think about it. And then we have to also consider the side effects based on other code from outside that can mutate or that could be affected while we were executing this method, hence race conditions, etc. All right. With Elm, as well as F#, as well as Haskell, that goes away as long as you're doing functional programming. Now, why I say, well, of course it's functional programming. Well, with F# it's functional first. With Haskell, it's purely functional, and with Elm, it's purely functional. So with that said, instead of doing example-based testing, where you have to be very specific about what your test is doing and what the output is supposed to be, we can kind of alleviate all that code. Not all of it, but most of it, I would argue. The compiler is supposed to be really good, that it's going to identify a lot of things that we do wrong, right? Based on static checking, etc. Or based on type system. But also, we now evolve from example-based testing to property-based testing, right? which I would love to say assumption testing. And what I mean by that, property-based testing is, and this is what you get with functional programming languages. JavaScript might have something, they might, but you're basically saying, hey, this is the function that I have. I assume that this function will always return this range of output, this range of numbers or whatever it is. You can make other assumptions like this function will never return a list that's more than 4 elements, right? There's a number of things that you could do in regards to making assumptions about the properties of your function or the output of your function. And then you can basically create some generators to basically generate by default 100, right? If we're talking about F#, different pieces of data to feed into your function to verify your assumption about that function. And then you can increment it to 10,000, 1 million, 10 million, different scenarios of feeding data to that function to see if that function still holds up. And a lot of times, based on me, I'm human, I find edge cases that I never ever considered. So again, I'm saying all this because you say why Elm, and I'm saying, well, because it's functional, and because it's functional, the tooling that it has, you can leverage to, again, engineer industrial grade software, right? So maybe I can say in summary, I'm attracted to the idea of programming in Elm to get within the web space because I feel that I will be set up for success because functional programming caters towards correctness versus this hipster generation of let's see how complex I can make this application. I'm not about that. I want to focus on correctness. I want to focus on not being terrified to either refactor or make an update based on the change of a requirement, which may mean or relate to a change in behavior of that code. And I don't want to be scared to change it, right? And so because of the type system, the compiler that really helps and identifies issues, and also the testing tools, hence property-based testing, I feel like we can get back to engineering and we can actually build good software that's sustainable over time, not just for version 1 or version 1.5. I'm talking about over time, it's going to hold up because it's industrial grade. So that's my dissertation. JJ Smith says, I want to use Crystal Lang. I don't know what Crystal Lang is. Is that for web development as well? I've never heard of it before. What's Crystal Lang? Let me try to Google it. Crystal language is licensed under the Apache. I hope when I click on this, it's not going to take me to some suspect site. Okay. Let me read this. Crystal syntax is heavily inspired on Ruby's, so it feels natural to read and easy to write, and has the added benefit of a lower learning curve for experienced Ruby devs. So, okay, I'm looking at it. Crystal, Go, Java, Python, Ruby. Well, Crystal is, they're comparing it to other object-oriented programming languages. Type of, yep, not reference checks. All types are non-nilable in Crystal, and nilable variables are represented as union between the type and nil. As a consequence, the compiler will automatically check for null references in compile time, helping prevent. So this looks interesting. It's my first time hearing about this. However, based on my understanding, especially listening to Elixir Fountain podcast, I'll repeat, Elixir Fountain podcast. I like that podcast. I don't know Elixir, but I like learning regardless. A lot of Ruby developers that I'm aware of, they migrate to Elixir, which is a programming language that sits on top of Erlang. And so I'm not sure if you already know that, if you've already checked out Elixir, but yeah, the majority of Ruby developers, I thought the natural migration or evolution, because I'm a functional programmer now, right? So I sit in like the all right, whatever. They tend to migrate to Elixir. So, but this Crystal Lang more than likely isn't functional, but it probably has some other advantages such as speed, maybe. But there's some benefits that you do get with a functional language. Hence my emphasis on correctness. So I'll try to type it right here. Elixir. That's how you spell Elixir. And you go to Elixir Fountain. How do you spell fountain? Fountain, right? And yeah, that's it. So we got one viewer. I'm going to check out in 60 seconds if I don't see any other comments. I wasn't expecting to actually talk to anybody, but this is cool. And wish me luck on my journey. 30 more seconds, I'll check out. It's 2:30 right now. I think I'm hungry. 15 seconds, I'll check out. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Deuces, adios, de veo a ratito. I am out. I'm Scott Nimrod. Hire me. What do I do? I do Xamarin. I do WPF. I do F#. And I would say in 6 months from now, going full throttle, I'm going to be doing web development. And, well, for money. And that's it. So, adios. Thanks for your support. I am out.